Welcome to TED Talk, November, this will be the 24th, is it? I think. Hope I'm not jumping the gun. And I'm so happy to be here, to be in your presence, and to share what some people believe, is actually not one of my favorite topics, but it is. Anthropology, psychology, and all of the ologies that I appear to badmouth, I really like them. Yes? So today we're going to talk about anthropological theories of differences in communication styles between men and women. My love for anthropology, in particular evolutionary anthropology, goes way back. And so I would like to share with you, some of the differences and theories in terms of communication styles between men and women. Yes? So welcome. First, I'll give a brief introduction, looking at chatting by the numbers. I will provide biological evidence. I'll also provide some anthropological theories, and of course, summary and closing remarks. Full disclosure, I have 4 sisters, a wife and a daughter. And so and I have a son as well. So I have first-hand observations that I hope we can elucidate and understand the behaviors, including my own behavior. So let's look at who's talking. On average, this study came out in 2006 that women say at least 7,000 words per day and guys only about 2,000. Now, I'm not here to drive enmity between the sexes, nor am I here to perpetuate stereotypes. We're here to understand what's really going on and to put these findings under very close examination. Chatting by the numbers, in 2006, Luann Brezendine on NBC's Today reported that the average woman speaks about 20,000 words a day, while the average man utters about 7,000. Either way, depending on which study you look at, the evidence is pointing to the fact that women are more verbose than men. Women, according to the Journal of Behavioral Addiction, this came out in, I should put the date there, 2013. They spend 141 more minutes per day on their phones than men. Now, technology has improved, and there's a lot of new technology. So the time spent on the phone, it was not clear whether it was doing texting or watching videos or at least talking. It was just reported that they spend much more time, 141 more minutes per day on phones than do men. In the journal Science in 2007, one author looked at some, I believe they were college students, and found that the women spoke approximately 546 words more than, on average, more than men per day. In the journal Neuroscience, a little earlier, we found that little girls, 3 to 5-year-olds, use, almost 13,000 more words in their vocabulary than boys. Boys at that age are not, I guess there's a lot of pointing and maybe some primal sounds in some cases, and girls are like, they're ready for talk shows. At least that's what the evidence suggests. That's what it shows. Now let's talk about, so we see a reporting of the behaviors on the psychology side. We see some correlation with neurology, yes? and some correlation with psychiatry. But let's take a little deeper look at some biological evidence and to see if we can find agreement. In 2013, Journal of Neuroscience, they took a look at a certain protein, the FOXP2 protein, so-called the language protein. And it was found that they're are much more prevalent in the brains of women than in men, and that difference may account for disparities in verbosity. Yes, this was a watershed finding. More biological evidence. Science magazine in 2001 showed that they first discovered the FOXP2 protein, and that it was key in speech production. And that gene has also been, the FOXP2 protein that is, has been connected with vocalizations in other species, other animals, including birds, bats, and mice. And so we see that this is not, at least what the theory is saying, the evidence is pointing, it's not confined to a particular species. I had pets myself and knew nothing about FOXP2 protein or any protein besides edible protein growing up. And I did notice that among my dogs, that the females were much more alert and would these were like guard dogs, and they would sound the alarm, so to speak, although they might not have been the more aggressive, but they sounded the alarm in case of strangers being around. So they were much more vocal, and that got the whole pack going. More biological evidence, right? They also found in young rats. In young rats, they took a look at a study in young rats, and they look at a group of 4 and 5-year-old children. They discovered that in rats, the chattier ones, the ones that were more vocal, were the female pups, and that they had more FOXP2 protein in their brains than the more quiet, the more reticent males. Yes? In the human subjects, in the 4 and 5-year-old, they found that there was 30% more of FOXP2 protein in the brains of girls than in boys. Now, once again, let me remind everybody, the purpose of this talk is certainly not to drive enmity between the sexes, but to foster understanding. And so we need to provide the scientific evidence and provide the data to support any conclusions that we will draw. So we've talked about the psychology, the neurology, and the psychiatry. Then we went on to look at the biology and in particular the FOXP2 protein and how it was expressed in human beings and the different male and female, and also we saw it in other animals. And I too have a first-hand account of that. So let's go a little bit and talk some anthropology. So prior to 10,000 years ago, yes, agriculture came about 10,000 years ago, right? Before the rise of agriculture in the Fertile Crescents of Asia. We were hunter-gatherers. We're hunter-gatherers, and we see the gender dimorphism in human beings, and that developed as a result of the separation or division of labor, where the hunting and the gathering was done by men, and the hunting by men, rather, the gathering mainly by women, and also women were responsible for childcare. So our bodies developed in terms of the muscular content and the hormones, the male hormones, of course, expressed to support the hunting more so than the gathering. Yes, so men were doing the hunting, and women were doing the gathering and child rearing. Yes. So we lived in small groups, hunter-gatherer societies, and the bigger groups were more extended family groups, and we did this for basic protection and to share the duties of basically finding food, which was our primary occupation. So let's look at, so there's hunting and there's gathering, yes? Let's look at hunting for a moment. What's required to be a good hunter? Well, you got to be fast. The animals are fast, yes? We got to be able to bring down that woolly mammoth. It's going to take some strength, yes? Some stamina as well. When you're tracking an animal that might be wounded, but it's still viable to some degree. So we got to chase him down. We got to hunt him down. We have to bring a certain amount of stealth, right? So that we can get within striking distance of the animal. Remember, we did not have the benefit of rifles, etc. And even then, being stealthy is well advised. We also had to be patient. We had to be patient. We had to wait for, in many cases, for the prey to traverse their normal paths before and come within close enough distance so that we can, try and quarry, gather our quarry. But note that at the bottom of the list, chatting. The worst hunter is one that chats too much. For one, he's going to scare away all the good prey. That's number one. Second, the other hunters, I think, and this is an opinion, that they're not, into stories when they're hunting. We need to be quiet. We need to be stealthy. And talking about what happened at the camp is not going to go over well. In fact, I don't think, and that's my opinion, that such a hunter will be very successful and might be excluded from the next hunt. Just saying. So chatting it doesn't make the list. Let's take a look at gathering, though. Gathering was done primarily by women in small groups for security and sharing of information. Now, how are we going to share information? Okay? Communication, verbal communication. That is very important. And success in that society as a gatherer comes with the ability to critically discern changes and peculiarities in the environment. We need to share information about available resources. Where is the next patch of nuts? If nuts grow in patches, where can we find those, right? They also need to differentiate between the delicacy and the deadly. There are some plants that look alike. There's some seeds that look alike, except if you look much more closely, then one would observe these differences, these minor differences, and that could be the difference between life and death. So being able to communicate this information was critical for the survival of the entire clan. So the gathering process therefore becomes more efficient with constant communication. We're sharing information. These plants are grown over here, these seeds, these roots, etc. So being the gatherer, communication is a constant. I want to add to that the other, when we have the division of labor, that the primary childcare duties fell on women, as it does today as well. And so being able to communicate with other mothers about maybe diseases or risks or any differences, peculiar differences in the children's behavior, health-wise, and so forth. So among women, communication has been critical to our survival, and that is worth salutations all day. So let's bring the biology and the anthropology together, right? So the evidence presented so far suggests that the FOXP2 protein evolved in higher quantities in women in response, here we go, in response to a necessity to gather for the survival of the species. We find that the adaptation was less pronounced in men, because men were, their primary occupation was the hunting, and that the FOXP2 protein was not, did not contribute in a positive way to that objective. Yes? So I would like to then summarize, and then we'll take questions. So the research suggests that women are more verbose than men, and it is as a result of a key evolutionary development. That's the takeaway. that saw the rise of higher levels of the FOXP2 protein in women that result in necessary, frequent, and efficient communication for the purpose of the survival of the human species. I thank you very much for taking the time to listen to my talk, and I will yield the lectern and accommodate questions.
Thanks, Dr. C. So if anyone has any questions, the floor is open. So you can type them in the chat, or if you like to, you can unmute yourself and shout out the question. So I guess my question would be, have you read Neil Shubin's Your Inner Fish yet?
Yes, I have. Yes, I have.
Any parting thoughts about Your Inner Fish?
I tell you, it's one of these reads that I'm taking my Thanksgiving break. So with COVID, we're gonna just stay put. But when I do stay put, is to take a deeper dive into interesting reads. Other than that, I'll be watching gangster movies. So come tomorrow morning, it's a deeper dive into my inner fish. So yes.
One particular revelation that I enjoyed is when I was taking biology, because I was originally a bio student. There was a section about bony finned fish, and Tiktaalik touches upon that, about how you have on normal fish, they're thin bone, they have fins instead of actual appendages. So on the bony fin fish, you start to see the development of almost like digits.
Yeah, appendages. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yes.
And those became fingers. So he talks about the transitionary species between fish and amphibians in the Tiktaalik, which is a species he discovered.
Yes, and might I say there are some species of catfish that will traverse the terrain in going from a dry pond to find water, and they have some very ancient lungs, which is quite remarkable. Yes.
Yes,
and
I think catfish and also lungfish and hogfish and mud skippers.
Mud skippers do the same. Mud skippers do the same, and yeah, there's also an argument that species emerged from the ocean, came on land, and some of them returned, and that's why we notice dolphins, for instance, and some of the mammals. The location of their fins would be where one would expect a land mammal, their appendages, to be located. So that I find that to be awesome and interesting. Nobody would know if they came to my class on the first day. I said, oh, I'll take that over to anthropology and religion. But you AEMB have a first-hand look at the real Dr. C.